This is the Louie Tee Network.
In the lab room.
10 minutes or less. Kansas City Chiefs.
Welcome, you are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me here in the lab room, 10 minutes or less, Kansas City Chiefs. So, you know what that means. Shoot that arrow, clock. Let's go. So, rewind with the Kansas City Chiefs. And who, raise your hand, I want to see by show of hands, who out there thought the Kansas City Chiefs at their bye week, which was in week 10, would be undefeated, the only undefeated team left in the National Football League? Raise your hand. My hand is down. And I don't see any other hands out there up right now. No, you couldn't have seen that coming. Stop it, okay? Stop it. Stop your nonsense. The Kansas City Chiefs were 9-0 going into their bye week, and nobody, and I mean nobody, saw it coming. Alex Smith, the whole trade in the offseason was working to perfection. Andy Reid had come over, brought his system, and this defense was playing lights out. The Kansas City, how many teams do you know in the National Football League are able to win 2 games in one season scoring 17 points or less? It doesn't happen often, but the Chiefs in that 9-game winning streak to start the season had 2 games where they scored 17 points and it was enough to win. That's good defense. But at the same time, you had to know that at some point, not scoring a lot of points was going to catch up to this Chiefs team. But ironically, in a twist of fate, it'd be the defense that let them down in the long run. So we fast forward to week 10 now. 9-0 Kansas City Chiefs coming off the bye in week number 11. They lose to the Denver Broncos and then proceed to lose their next 2. And they're at 9-3 after starting the season 9-0. They're on a 3-game losing streak. Now, look, it never is a good thing when you got to play one of the best teams in the league in the Denver Broncos 2 out of the next 3 games and you lose to them twice. That always has an effect. But that Chargers game in the middle probably shouldn't have happened. You should have won that game. Late game heroics by Phillip Rivers, and the Chargers takes one from you at Arrowhead. And so that one left a bad taste in your mouth. So now you're 9-3. How do you respond to your first adversity of the season? You score 111 points in a 2-game stretch and 2 blowout victories on the road at Washington and at Oakland. Now, again, it always helps when you play bad football teams, but that's what you are supposed to do to bad football teams. You beat them up. And that's what the Chiefs did, 111 points in 2 weeks. That's a lot of points for a team that was offensively challenged earlier in the season. So now, after the 2-game winning streak, you're thinking, okay, Chiefs are back on track. They could still have an outside shot at winning the AFC West division. And then they find out that, hey, maybe we're not back. They lose their final 2 games, including a back-breaking loss at home to the Indianapolis Colts, a team that they would eventually see later. And so they finish up the season at 11-5. Now, that's good enough for second place in the AFC West and a trip to the postseason as the 5 seed in the AFC postseason. So you look at their run to the postseason. They get in as the 5 seed, matched up against the 4 seed Indianapolis Colts to get into the postseason, and it's a shootout. This Chiefs team is up 31-7 at halftime. Total domination. And you're thinking, one of the better defenses in the league. No way this lead is going anywhere. This game is over. Or is it? Colts put together a furious run, come back and steal the game, and Chiefs go home in heartbreaking fashion. They had injury upon injury upon injury in that wild card weekend game. Honestly, if they would have won, I don't know how they would have fielded a team the very next week because they were banged up in that game against the Colts. And so there goes their season. Really good first season in Kansas City for Andy Reid. A lot of big things to build upon, a lot of building blocks. However, there are some issues with this roster, some areas of need that they have to improve. So we fast forward to the 2014 offseason, and we're going to look at the Kansas City Chiefs and their free agents. So you look at the list of free agents for this Chiefs football team. Jarrell Jackson, Dexter McCluster, Kyle Williams, Brendan Albert, John Asamoah, Jeff Schwartz, Tyson Jackson, Frank Zombo, Akeem Jordan, Hussein Abdullah, Quentin Demps, Kendrick Lewis, and defensive lineman Jarrell Poe is a restricted free agent. So you look at that list, and for me, there are about 3 guys on this list that you probably want back, 2 more so than the other, but you don't have a lot of money right now in free agency. Again, the cap on the salary cap is expected, that ceiling is expected to rise and elevate. We're hearing potentially upwards of $10 million in the new league year. So if that does happen, that will definitely give you a little bit of breathing room if you are the Kansas City Chiefs. You've made some moves in this offseason, cut some guys loose to get above water. And so right now you've got a little bit over $2 million worth of cap space, maybe a little bit more, depending on contracts you may have voided and things of that nature, restructure some deals, cut some guys loose. But it's going to be important to keep some of your stuff in-house. And really, I just read off a list of guys. One that's not coming back, Brendan Albert's not going to be back. And I think he felt some kind of way about the way his situation was handled last year, was a little salty about the way the Chiefs went out and drafted a tackle. And so I think the Chiefs are ready to move on. I think Brendan Albert is ready to move on. He wants to go that way. Chiefs want to go that way. So I think that's going to be a mutual split there with those guys. But you were the best special teams team in the National Football League. Your special teams unit, in terms of return units, were by far the best. Your punt return unit, most touchdowns in the league with 2. Dexter McCluster was the catalyst for that. He's a free agent. He needs to be back. And this is really simple. Kansas City, don't be foolish here, okay? Let's be smart here. Don't be foolish and allow this guy to walk away. He's a multifaceted athlete that can help you on offense. He's a little chess piece. You can move around backfield, slot, out wide, in motion. He's a guy that can do some things offensively, and where his value is at its greatest is on special teams in the punt return game. And if you need him to in a pinch, he'll return kickoffs for you as well. You can't let Dexter McCluster go. He is too valuable to your football team. He needs to be back. That needs to be priority number 1 in terms of guys in-house. You look at safety Quentin Demps. Here's another guy that helped you tremendously last year. At the safety position, 4 INTs. So he was getting busy back there helping you force turnovers. And where his value was extra and probably its greatest was on the kickoff return team, where he averaged 30 yards per kickoff return, tops in the league. Chiefs as a team averaged 29 yards per kickoff return. That also was tops in the league, and he was a huge reason why you were able to accomplish that feat. He scored a touchdown on a 95-yarder. He needs to be back on your football team, if for no other reason than special teams. And like I said before, the guy got you 4 picks at the safety position as well. I think he's a guy that you need to bring back, and I don't think you're going to have to break the bank for either one of these guys. So they need to be back. Another guy that I think you can bring back, and before the season started, I was like, hey, I think Tyson Jackson's time in Kansas City is up. And I was saying, first round pick, hasn't really played all that well, not at least to the standard of where he was drafted. Get him out of here. But I look at Tyson Jackson, and I feel like he's starting to hit his apex. 4 sacks, a career high last year in 2013. I thought he was among your most consistent defensive linemen. Now, I know Dontari Poe was an animal. I mean, he was a beast last year. But I thought Tyson Jackson held his own and was a part of this defense being so dominant early on. I think he's a guy that if it isn't going to cost you a lot, you bring him back. If he's asking for too much and you feel like you can do something comparable at that position, you let him walk and you bring somebody else in, whether it's via the draft or it's through free agency. You don't have a lot of money right now, so I don't know if you really want to go out there in the free agent market looking for a replacement when you got a guy in-house. Again, if the dollars make sense, make the move. If they don't, you move on. So those are the guys I think you need to bring back. Now, let's move on to team needs for the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's simple. Wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. If you're the Chiefs, your first pick in the 2014 draft must, M-U-S-T, exclamation point, must be a receiver. Dwayne Bowe needs help. And you got to have it in the worst way. We saw how this team was decimated by injuries in the postseason, and they had no targets. Once guys started going down with injuries, you need a receiver. How about tight end? I know you drafted Kels out of Cincinnati last year, but he got injured, and I don't know what he is. I think you need some more tight end help. And I think defensive end, if Tyson Jackson isn't back, then you have to upgrade that position as well, because I don't think you have a starter on your football team right now. I don't trust Allen Bailey, and so I think you need to go out and get a starter if, in fact, he is not back. And so that's going to do it for the Kansas City Chiefs in 10 minutes or less.
10 minutes or less.
Like the content? Want more? Sub up.